Cards and we live now. Jeremy Lee in the building and every guest that you ever needed. Sports Cards after hours keep the hobby heated. Updates, hobby talk like you never seen it. Sports Cards live and none could ever beat it. Sports Cards is a lifestyle. Sports Cards and we live now. Welcome to another episode of Sports Cards Live with your host, Jeremy Lee.
Well, all right, everybody, we are back. Welcome to episode number 184 of Sports Cards Live. Today is Saturday, May the 20th, 2023. My name is Jeremy Lee. I would like to thank Jason Kuntz from Otia Sports for joining us last week. Great episode. Check it out. Tomorrow night, 9:30 Eastern on the channel, we will be covering the PWCC Weekly Hockey Auction with none other than Josh Madigan of the Hockey Cards Gong Show. And on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, is episode number 2 of Taking Stock, a new show in collaboration with the Sports Card Dad Network, featuring myself and Dennis Zender, also known as PC with DPZ. You may know him from his collector series that used to broadcast to the Lucas channel, but is now on the Sports Card Dad channel. On episode 2, we will be taking stock of the issues with sports cards as investments. I'd like to ask you to join over 300,000 people who have already downloaded the Center Stage app across both iOS and Google Play for quick comps and card management features. Their app is the fastest and most accurate at card shows or at home to help you price your cards. Build, organize, and share your collection with friends and find other collectors to follow using their new social sharing features. They have some exciting new partnerships coming soon. Please stay tuned and join me in supporting the great team they have there and the innovation they are undertaking. Also, use protection, practice safe swaps. Veriswap is an app middleman service that lets you securely trade cards through the mail. Every transaction up to $1 million in value is fully insured by their guarantee. To use Veriswap, simply upload your inventory, make trade, partial trade, or full cash offers, and negotiate with thousands of traders already on the platform. Check them out on iOS and Android. As part of a special offer, your first trade on Veriswap is only $1. The referral link is in the body of the description of this video. Check it out for your convenience. Also, check out hobbynewsdaily.com, guys. Daily dose of hobby news and entertaining content. It's a collaboration from various content creators and original writers, and just launched last month. Shout out Leighton, Sheldon, Just Collect, Vintage Breaks. Leighton will be joining us a little bit later tonight for the Vintage Spotlight segment. And as always, thank you to our loyal viewers and listeners. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel or following on Spotify, please take a moment and do so. Let's get to it, though. Let's get to it. Tonight's guest started in the hobby in the early 70s, buying discounted hockey cards at the candy store because, well, he was after the gum. I remember that gum. That was delicious. He picked up the pace at the dawn of the junk wax era and got away from the hobby in the early 1990s and was in and out through until the pandemic. He started his Sports Cards Lessons podcast in 2022. His favorite teams are the Toronto Maple Leafs, Montreal Canadiens, Kansas City Chiefs. His favorite athletes are Wayne Gretzky, Alex Ovechkin, Mike Tyson, and Trinity Rodman. Originally from Wallingford, Connecticut, currently hailing from Plantsville, Connecticut. Let's bring him out. Ken Cairns, welcome to Sports Cards Live. And how are you today?
Wow, Jeremy, what an introduction. Wow. I am doing great. I'm super excited to be here. I spend many Saturday nights in the audience watching, and it's kind of cool to be on the screen tonight.
Well, it's good to have you, Ken. Welcome to the show. You had me on your Sports Card Lessons podcast a few months ago. We had scheduled a home and home, right? We like to do that. We had scheduled to have you on my channel. We actually scheduled you. I didn't realize that you were scheduled to be on April the 15th, which I then reached out to you. I said, hey, Ken, can we reschedule? Because that's my 3-year anniversary on YouTube. I'd like to do something kind of special for that, to celebrate that. And you were gracious enough to push back. And here we are today, finally. But you know what? Right before we went live, I said, how are you doing, man? You said, I'm good. I'm tired. I spent the day at the Fenway card show. Before we jump in and learn about you, how was the card show? How was the Fenway card show today? And why is it called the Fenway card show?
Well, it's at it's the Fenway card show because it's at Fenway Park, where the Red Sox play. And this is the second card show they had there. I did not make the first one. I made this one. It was fun. It was a great show. It was my first time being to Fenway Park. I'm not a baseball fan. I've never been to a professional baseball game, so it was my first time going there, and just being able to walk out and look at the field and things like that was it was really kind of a cool thing. But the show itself was great. It's a rainy day up here in the Northeast, and the show, if you've ever been to, Fenway, was under the bleachers in the walkway, the runway underneath where you go down and, you buy your soda and your beer or whatever. So that's where it was. So when it started raining, there you can see the water coming in from, it was working its way towards the vendors, let's say, but it held off enough. It was a great day, lots of people, lots of crowd, lots of sales. So that the hobby is definitely alive and well when it comes to card shows up here.
And you were set up as a vendor, or you were walking around as an attendee?
As a vendor. Yep.
And you said sales were good, so you did a nice amount of deals. Were you happy with your volume of deals?
Yep. Absolutely happy with it. You know, I sell everything from dollar cards up to, $3,000-$4,000 cards. So every show is different for me. And I always use the phrase, know the show. Well, I didn't know the show. So I kind of brought everything, right? Because I had no idea. Do I bring the little stuff, the big stuff? So I brought everything today. I was the guy with the buffet on my table, a little bit of something for everybody. But yeah, sales were great. Yeah, it was a good day.
And it was a good day, he says. So one thing that always comes out of, the narratives from card shows are, some people will say, well, no one was buying, everybody wanted to trade, or it was really healthy, there was lots of money moving around. Was there money moving around today, or were people looking to trade, or a bit of both?
It's a lot of both, and you see that at every show. And I understand what you're saying, because certain shows you go to, people just aren't buying. But I think where the state of the hobby, where it is right now, I've noticed the trend where after the national last year, I noticed the buying going down, and then probably just before Christmas, we watched it start to go back up. And yeah, there was a lot of cash sales today. A lot of people were buying, which is good. It's just a good sign that there's strength there.
Well, that's good to hear. So good day overall. Did you see any of your pals there? I know you're part of this Wolf Pack crew with Rob Gerard and the Cousins Collectibles and a few others. Did you see
Rob and I, we carpooled as we usually do, and we were set up together. Yeah.
Oh, good. All right. Well, let's now that we've broken the ice here, a couple of comments. Georgetown, looking forward to it. This comment came in a few hours ago before we started, but glad to see you, Georgetown. Paul Lack, welcome to the show. 90s hockey collector. Studio Sports is back. Mark Santucci, good to see you. David Kaplan is here from Vancouver. Dave, nice to see you. Joe Perot says one more Saturday. One more in a long line of Saturdays, Joe. Hello, Collector's Dream. We have Al here. Al will be our guest next Saturday. And Lapper in the house. Good to see you, Aaron. I also want to point out, Dave Kaplan here is one of the partners of the people who have actually contributed the giveaway for tonight. We have a giveaway tonight, everybody, and I'm going to let you see what it is right here. There we go. Dave Kaplan, his partner Mike Chark from AA Sports Cards, just offered to do a giveaway. 2 hanger boxes, one of the 2018 high number baseball heritage and one of 2019. So we're going to get to those later on. We're going to do those. So stick around. It's going to be real easy to take part in the giveaway. So thank you again. To check out at AA Sports Cards on Instagram and on, actually, I'm going to show you this really quickly here as well. There's on the ticker. You can find them on aasportscards.com. On eBay, they are called Vahoota, Vahoota. I'll leave that up there for a few minutes. But again, thank you so much to you, Dave and Mike, for the giveaway for sure. Sports MD Card Collector, good evening. Scott Hirschman, welcome to the show. Thank you. I love when we have someone, Ken, someone always listens to the podcast and then they come over to the live. Love it, Scott. Welcome. Tyler, good evening. Mookie Chilson, as always, in the house. Glad Big Ken is on board. I have to ask Ken, why do we call you Big Ken? Because I've met you. You're not that big.
Well, it's really funny because in my family, I had Ken Jr., right? So they called me Big Ken and him Little Ken, right? And yeah, it's funny because my brother-in-law, we have Big Tony and Little Tony. It was almost like it stayed in the family, right? Everybody, we had big and little. So
Right.
yeah, not because of my size, just because I was older.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, I got because when I met you at the Toronto Expo in person for the first time, I thought, okay, Big Ken, I'll go with it. I'll go. But I love calling you Big Ken. It's like calling a real big guy Slim, or
Yeah,
something
yeah,
like
yeah.
that. So glad to have you. Reno Reigns says, Ken, appreciate your insight. It has always been hobby relevant without all the glitter. And yes, if you are not yet subscribed or following Ken on YouTube and his podcast, Sports Card Lessons, I've been listening for a while, which actually, let's go right back to then, Ken. So I first heard about you because, Rob Gerard is the sports card therapist. He's a friend of mine. I've been following him for a couple of years now, listening to his content, watching it. And next thing you know, he's talking about his buddy Ken Cairns, Sports Card Lessons. And so I went to listen to your podcast, and I was traveling. I listen to a lot of podcasts when I'm traveling. I was walking through an airport, either LA or Vancouver. I don't even remember. Had my earpods in, and I'm listening to your podcast, and you were talking about touring all the LCSs, all the card shops in Winnipeg, Canada, where I'm originally from. And I'm listening to you talk about these shops and people that I knew. I'm like, this guy's using his time to talk about card shops in Winnipeg, which is not a huge, it's maybe 800, 900,000 people, not a major city, but a big city nonetheless. And I just really liked hearing about that. And I've been listening to you ever since. And as Reno here said, you just kind of break down what you're doing and talking about your thoughts of the week and that kind of thing. So I love it. That's how we first met. Hello to you, Skeppy, Bobby Slim here, Bobby Perel calling himself Slim, and Jeff Hart. Good evening. Oh, Jeff's going to try to make it to Fenway tomorrow. Well, make sure you go say hi tomorrow to Big Ken, Jeff, and tell him you saw him on the show here. So, okay, let's keep on going. I'd like to hear a bit about your history, Ken. In the intro, I did mention that you've been in and out of the hobby like many people were from, say, the end of the 80s until the pandemic. But why don't you just talk a little bit about, when you came back in the last couple of times, what really caught your interest and maybe what this time has you feeling like you're in this thing for the long haul now?
Yeah, I think coming back into it, and it's funny you mentioned the wolf pack earlier, and it was really, which I didn't realize at the time, was that wolf pack mentality. When I came, when I was doing it other times in my life, I was doing it by myself, and when you're doing something by yourself, it's only fun for so long, right? And I think when I came back in this time, I started meeting people. You mentioned Rob Gerard, the sports card therapist. We became very good friends, and it was being introduced to a community, right? So everyone I started meeting in the hobby, I started to become friends with, and I think just becoming part of that community was so much bigger than just the collecting itself. I want to say the people that I was meeting was bigger than the collecting itself. Well, of course, the collecting and the cards are main, the main reason we're here, but I think the people keep us here. I think finding your place, finding your people, finding the things that you all have in common, it's easy to get in and it's easy to stay in, and it's really easy to enjoy the hobby.
Now, I know from talking to you and listening to your podcast that you collect hockey, among other things. You're in Connecticut. So explain to the audience, what is your connection to hockey and why do you collect it?
So my family was from Canada. They moved down from Montreal to Connecticut. And hockey was in the family blood, right? Once it's there, it's there. And as a young kid, we were probably the only hockey fans in our neighborhood. And we talk about, you mentioned earlier, getting the discount hockey packs. Nobody bought them. I mean, they had all kinds of packs of cards, but nobody bought hockey. Hockey was always down on the end on the discount. But we still, the family still had ties to Montreal. My grandmother was still there. My grandmother and Gump Worsley's wife were friends from church. we were able to, when Montreal would go to the Stanley Cup, when they would win the Stanley Cup, things like that, we would get passes. We could go to the Montreal Forum if they were in the playoffs. We could go to St. Catherine Street for the parade, where they're parading the Stanley Cup down St. Catherine Street. So this stuff was happening to me. I wasn't even 10 years old yet, right? I was very young when this stuff was happening, and it just became a part of who I am. We watched hockey. I knew all the players. I knew everything about hockey, but we were the only family that did, right? I mean, I think it's safe to say it wasn't until U.S. won the gold medal in 1980 is when hockey really boomed in the States, and it took off from there. But as a hockey fan and a player, I played hockey my whole life. I was in on the ground floor, here on hockey.
That's pretty cool. So you mentioned when the Miracle on Ice happened, the gold medal in 1980, you say hockey boomed in the US. It's kind of a strong statement to say hockey boomed because we're still challenged, to get a lot of hockey fans in certain regions in the US. But 8 years later, Wayne Gretzky gets traded from Edmonton to LA, another sort of boom, if you will, of hockey in the States, and then expansion in the NHL to all these other cities and southern, the Florida teams, the Texas teams, the Arizona team, California, and all that. So it did lead to a lot of that. But again, you're at the Fenway show today. Was there, Fenway? There's a hockey team there. Was there a lot of hockey there? Were you selling hockey? Or were you the only person walking around that you think might have been interested in hockey?
No, I was selling hockey. There's, hockey has become pretty big around here, especially here on the East Coast. All the shows I go to, and I'm like, I do a Long Island show, the Hofstra show in Long Island, and I'll tell you what, there was probably more hockey at that show. The only other show I saw more hockey at was the Toronto Expo. I was just amazed how much hockey was there, and I can tell you that people coming to my table today, I did have some hockey out. Of course, we're at the end of the season now, right? So only the players who are really still playing, may their prices may be up, but a lot of it has dropped back down now. So some of that hockey I put away now. I don't put it all out. And I had people asking, like, do you have any more hockey? Do you have this player, that? Because now people are coming and asking for, once they see hockey in the case, whoever they collect there. And Boston, I mean, you're in Boston, so that's a big hockey town too. So
it's an original 6
yeah.
hockey town where there's only 6 of those. So that's pretty cool. And I guess, because you do your podcast and people listen to it and they know you collect hockey, I'm guessing, and deal in hockey, I'm guessing people come to you looking for hockey. Is that the case?
Yeah. They come looking. They know what I have. I usually have, a good amount of Alex Ovechkin. So, pretty popular right now, right? The Gretzky cards, the Gretzky rookies are always very popular. But then you have the whole wave of young kids coming in looking for, their players, who they're looking for, who they want to, they just want to collect. And I have a whole dollar box, 5-row, and they're all, some base cards and things like that, I sell out there at 25 and 50 cents. Those kids love them. They come through and they dig through them and find who they want to collect. And it's, it's probably more work for me to do it, but I just love to see the kids down there, finding, and the parents are like, oh, thank God. Like I found a box that's $1 and under, because a lot of these cards, they're very expensive. The kids say go roll up and, they want a card. It's, it could cost a lot of money.
Yeah, some cards they want could be 5 figures, no problem. They're not going to get them, but they certainly would want them. Last question on Fenway. You said it was your first time doing this show. Do people recognize you when you're set up a card show from seeing you on YouTube and listening to your podcast? And what's that like for you?
Yeah, that's great. That's probably one of the best parts of setting up as a dealer, hands down, is the people coming up to the table and they'll be like, hey, Big Ken, and then I'll wait for it because I have no idea who they. You must get that too. People, you're very recognizable, right? And they come up, and then you're waiting, and they introduce themselves. And a lot of people, I'll shout out. When I meet them at a show, and they'll come see me. Give me your information. I'm going to shout you out on the next podcast because I love that, and I really want to attract more people, to come in. And there's a good amount of people that come see me and say, this is who I am, but I don't want to be shouted out. I just want to come tell you I love what you're doing.
Yeah, that's always nice. Yeah, I do get recognized. It's from my hairstyle. That's what people tend to pick up from and remember of me. Let's say hello to Willie T. Says, not familiar with Ken yet. Should be an interesting one. Well, happy to make the introduction. Scott says, Big Ken, are the shows getting busier or slowing down?
Oh, definitely getting busier. Definitely getting busier.
Paul says, watching the show with poutine on the table. Let's talk cardboard. I love it. Colin Murray, what is going on? And Mark Santucci says, I'm in the lower state, New York. I like hockey, especially one of the teams that starts with the Montreal Canadiens. He wants to know, Ken, what part of Connecticut are you from, the New York side or the Boston side?
I'm really right in the middle. And when I say I'm dead in the middle of Connecticut, and I'll tell you what, I could have a neighbor on one side of me with the Boston flags flying, and on the other side with the New York stuff flying. So it's right in the middle, and there's a lot of arguing going on all the time.
Love it. All right. So now tell us a bit about what you collect. We've talked about hockey, but I want to hear from you. What do you collect, but how do you approach the hobby, and how has it evolved for you over the past, well, as long as you want to cover? I really want you to share your approach, your experience, your approach, maybe what you were collecting before, how the evolution of your approach has impacted what you're collecting. So please take it away.
Yeah, so a lot of the collecting I did back in the late 80s, early 90s, we know it was a lot of junk wax. And what I liked was I got a lot of in-person auto cards. So it was, probably the end of the 90s when eBay, the early 2000s, when eBay was really starting to come along. And I used to go on and I used to buy a lot of those cards. Now, a lot of the values of those cards aren't great, but I actually love those cards. So, that was probably a great lesson for me, that it wasn't about, the value. It was about really what, collect what you like, getting what you like. I kind of lost focus on that when I came back into the hobby, because it was a whirlwind when I came back in to start collecting, going in the closet and pulling out all those cards that I had, picked up through the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s, and then started setting up at shows and then getting involved, like figuring out you can buy on eBay and where everybody was buying again. And, even though I was a teacher my whole life, I'm a great student too. So I can talk to people and really get information and figure out where to get the where I should be buying cards, things like that, what I should be doing. I'm not saying I listened all the time, but I heard it. And when I started setting up, I started buying the cards that I thought everybody else wanted, right? To what I thought was going to be selling. And at the end of the day, after about a year, the first year of doing that, I said, you know what, I'm going to step back, because even though I think people want basketball and baseball and all these things, I really don't follow those sports. I really can't talk about those sports. I can't, really have a great conversation with somebody at the table. And I really enjoyed the people, and I wanted to have these conversations. So I went back just started putting in the cases the things I knew about. Right. I started putting hockey in there. I started putting, Mike Tyson cards in there. I started putting football, lots of football. I know football inside and out. So then my experience as a dealer changed. And that's kind of where the podcast was really, it really picked up speed, because I came in, I'm talking about the podcast, I'm talking about all the things I'm doing. And then there's a few episodes where I said, okay, wait a minute, I have to make changes, because I'm going down a road that I'm really not, I don't think that it's going to be good for me. So I made a bunch of changes, and, I fell in love with the hobby all over again.
Yeah, I love that, because one thing that happened to me in my collecting journey is that I found myself boxed in for a while into what I was collecting, and it would include some pieces that I just didn't love, but I needed them because they were on a certain checklist, or a set registry, or a set, or a theme, and I realized that, I don't want to be a slave to a checklist myself. A lot of people do, and they want that structure, and go for it. I understand that. But I also have said before, and I think where you and I are alike this way, is that I think it's important to allow yourself as a collector to be fluid and to kind of try new things, and to stop collecting certain things, and even sell cards from your personal collection because you may be going in a different direction. I think we have to allow ourselves to no longer like the things that we have and not feel bad or guilty about it. Does that resonate with you?
Absolutely, absolutely. And even some of the stuff I do have, a lot of what I do in the hobby just really, pays for my PC. And I think a lot of people, do it the same way. And sometimes you get a card and it's in your PC and you really like this card, and then you see some other cards that you're like, I'd really rather have that card. And then what do? You start moving some of even if it's the same person, right? You start moving some of those cards to, allocate money to go buy this other card that you want to get. And it's okay to say, and I've done this, like I've collected people, and then I'd say, yeah, maybe that wasn't for me, and it was okay that I would sell those as a dealer, right? And take that money and buy the cards that I really wanted to buy for myself. Yeah.
I mean, when you think about player collecting, I think we all player collect to a degree. Not everybody, but a lot of collectors do. The common question is, who do you collect, or who do you PC? And I always say, well, it's what do you PC? Because you might collect a set or a team, or not necessarily just a specific player. But I've collected players before. I still do. And I sometimes wonder to myself, and let's face it again, some people have 3,000 cards of a certain, and I'm not saying anything negative about it. I'm only talking about my own approach, and I think trying to bounce it off of you right now. But like Dale Howard-Chuck, Hall of Fame hockey player, played for the Winnipeg Jets and then a few other teams later. That's his name spelt out of from the cup, right? The noble plates. And I was up to like 300 cards of his, and I thought to myself, do I need 300 cards of him, of Dale Howard-Chuck in my collection? And then I started realizing that a lot of when I first discovered eBay in the very late 90s, Dale Howard-Chuck, and there'd be like 6 different cards available outside of his 90s O-Pee-Chee base card stuff. And I remember dreaming and wishing for more and more cards. Here we are 23 years later, and there's a lot of options. So the cards that I discovered in 2001, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 aren't as interesting to me. They were at the time. They were the best cards I had, and now they're not as interesting because there's been so many more beautiful cards that have come out. So I find myself willing to sell some of the cards that were very important to me back then. And I wonder to the chat, like, has that happened to any of you guys who've been collecting since the 80s or 90s? Have you gotten away from some of those cards that were early targets of yours? And how about you, Ken? Is that something that you've gone through as well?
Yeah, I would say yes, because a lot of the hockey, like the Jaromir Jagrs, in the early days, it's like getting those, like the Gretzky's, the second year, the third year Gretzky's. Like I had all these cards, and I did not own a Gretzky rookie, so when I came back in again, I said, well, I have all these, O-Pee-Chee, second year, third year Gretzky's, that the values where when I had them, like some of those were pack pulled, right? They were, remember you used to have to scrape the, scrape off the, to reveal what it was going to say underneath, like a lottery ticket, some of those. And I never even scraped them because I thought, well, if I don't scrape them, they'll be worth more someday, right? So just moving some of those cards into some bigger cards, because I think, back in the day, I don't think we really thought Wayne Gretzky was going to, his cards were going to, I mean, we knew he was going to be a great player, but we didn't think his cards were going to ever cost this much money, right? So, if I would have known, like everybody says, I would have, but I've done that. I've moved some of those earlier cards that people are very happy to have, right? Because they missed out on them. And there were cards like they weren't like these cards were in pristine condition, right? Perfect condition. And I moved them to somebody who is absolutely happy to have them. And then I get to move into a card that I'm absolutely going to be happy to have.
Exactly. Right on. All right. So we're going to do a couple comments here. And thanks to the guys who have actually answered the question that I posed. We'll read those right away. And then once we're done that, we're going to bring Leighton Sheldon on. He's sitting in the green room right now for the Vintage Spotlight. I know, Ken, you got a question ready for Leighton. And just also to let everybody know, we do have a giveaway tonight. We're going to do it a little bit later. But let me quickly, again, flash what that giveaway is going to be. Courtesy of AA Sports Cards and Vahuda on eBay. Couple of Topps Heritage High Number Baseball. I think hanger packs, I suppose they're called. Very nice, just a contribution from these guys. Very grateful. So stick around and we'll be giving those away a little bit later in the show. But Larry Morris said, are the Whalers coming back? I mean, the Whalers became the Carolina Hurricanes and they are playing right now. I was just checking my phone. It's tied 1-1 against the Florida Panthers with 6.5 minutes left in the third period. What do you think, Ken? The Whalers ever going to come back?
Well, it won't be the Whalers, but our governor is meeting with the commissioner to try to get the Arizona Coyotes to, we want to offer them a brand new, arena here in Hartford. And I know it's all the rage right now in Connecticut because I had season tickets to the Whalers. I missed the Whalers when they left, right? So,
Ronnie Francis and Ray Ferraro and Mike Liute.
We and it's funny, all those Whalers that stayed, they started these hockey programs here that my kids played in, growing up here in Connecticut. We could only hope. We have a great market here. I think if a professional hockey team were to show up in a Hartford, they wouldn't have any trouble selling out that arena.
Well, that would be pretty cool. If I love the Whaler colors, that uniform. I still go after some Ron Francis cards where it's Whaler. All right, Leighton, keep holding on. We're going to do the comments and we're going to get to you, buddy. I promise. But first, Willie T said, with all American teams left in the playoffs and all being Sunbelt teams, is there interest in the state still? Seems like interest has faded a bit. I'd say it's definitely faded a bit up here, but I'm still very excited to see what's going to come from the NHL play. We're down to the Final Four, so it's going to be interesting, but definitely not the biggest markets that are left. 1956 Topps guy. Matthew says, I turned straight into the cards from well before I was born. 80s were fun, but I was attracted to the classics. So he got into I love that. 90s hockey collector. At some point, I sold everything to start fresh and focus. Some people want that complete reset. Sell everything and come back fresh. Mark Santucci, my answer to the cards I have, which I don't have a lot of the same players, so I'm not tired. And I'm not selling the players I do have. Very good. Paul, I'm in the early 30s, but I remember all supersized fries I bought at McDonald's at Paul Correa acetate cards. Very nice. Hello, Jeff McMahon. Bobby says, yes, Ken, 80-81 Topps scratch off are cool, and only Topps did that. And only the 1 year. Only the 1 year. Al G says, early cards might not always have the same eye appeal or type of memorabilia, but for me, they provide a sense of history. I haven't moved any of mine. And I think Al has 3,000 Jerome McGinley cards, something like that. So it's good to hear, good to see. That's the thing. We are all so different in the way we do this. Triple V says, I used to be obsessed with modern back in the 80s to 90s. Now all I mostly care about is vintage and pre-war, how time changes. Yes, for sure. Collector's Dream is rooting for the Panthers. Dennis Zender is with us. And again, Dennis and I will be hosting Taking Stock on Tuesday, when we will be taking stock on the issues with sports cards being investments. Mookie Chilson says, sadly, those Ranger fans used to invade Hartford Arena, make it a blue shirt home game. That used to happen in Winnipeg too, Mookie. Whenever the Leafs or the Habs were in town, there'd be more Toronto or Montreal fans in the Winnipeg Arena than the Winnipeg Jets. And Larry Morris says, love it. Still wearing my Whalers hat. I love it. Okay, guys, let's bring on Leighton, Ken, and let's do our vintage segment. You got a question for him, and he's been up to a lot. So, Leighton, welcome back. How are you? I got to say, it's nice to see you in a quiet, contained area. You're not walking the streets in New York. We're going to be able to hear you, and we won't get motion sickness. So it's nice to see you sitting down in your home.
Oh, Jeremy, thanks for having me. It's good to see you, Ken. I'm happy to be here. My son's in the other room, quietly on his tablet. Jerry, when I got off the phone last week, there was a swarm of, let's just say, people who were in need. And, they thought I was Vince Vaughn's cousin. I'm like, no, I swear, you can look up. I'm not him. I have no money for you. I have love, if I can help in any way. It was a little crazy. So I appreciate you being patient, your audience as well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, you are welcome. It's good to see you. Were you at the Fenway show today?
No, I have Crosby this weekend, so I wasn't able to do that. But we were rained out at baseball, so I probably could have made it up there for a road trip together. But who knew that we were going to be rained out yet again today?
And before we get to Ken's question for you, following you on Instagram, which everybody, if you're not following Leighton or Just Collect or Vintage Breaks, it's on the ticker right now where to follow him and his podcast, Trading Card Therapy. But you recently uncovered more wonderful cards that you are going to be offering soon. Can you tell us a little bit about your latest adventures of treasure hunting with Leighton Sheldon?
Sure. So recently I went out of town and I had the good fortune to meet with a collector who's been collecting since he was a child. But one of the really interesting things about this individual was that, and I hadn't met someone like this in a long time, he'd actually been collecting vintage PSA graded cards for about 25 years. So if you look at when PSA actually started grading, he was pretty close to the beginning. And so what I found was, obviously looking through his cards, there was a lot of, older graded cards. And I know people, always talk about grading standards and how they've changed and evolved. However, if you had the foresight that this gentleman, and actually he recruited kind of his wife to help out in the collecting as well, he was buying strong, centering as far as what he was looking for and great eye appeal 20 years ago. So I'm looking at a 52 Bowman Mickey Mantle PSA 7 that I think I posted on IG. I'm not sure. I mean, the thing's dead nut centered. If it was graded today, it might get a 7.5. Who knows? And so that quality was strong throughout the collection, and it was amazing to go through it. But it was one of those types of deals where, usually I'm someone who likes to either buy everything or, if we don't work it out, you don't get anything. And so I didn't buy everything. I didn't walk away with, thankfully, nothing. But it kept whittling down. So in other words, he had well over 1,000 graded cards. He said, "Oh, pick out whatever you like." Keep in mind, I'm thinking that means I get to buy. I'm paying him very strong. We've kind of talked about some of the parameters. So I picked out about 400 graded cards.
Wow.
I do all the work, and he's like, "Oh, Leighton, am I bothering you?" No. Just, keep talking. It's, 4 Clemente 62. Sure. Do I need one of them or 4? Yeah, put 4 in the pile. Who cares? So, I'm going through and I'm adding, the cards to the pile. And I ended up having some dinner with friends that evening in the area, went back to the hotel, did work on those cards, woke up early the next day, did work, sent the spreadsheet over, to his wife to evaluate. And I fully went in there thinking I was buying, 400 graded cards, even though I wasn't buying everything. And so that's when the real negotiations apparently began.
Okay.
And I'm not going to, take your audience through all the trials and tribulations of this particular treasure hunter. But let's just say I am happy in the end. I believe the collector's happy. But, you don't always get what you want.
How many cards did you end up getting?
136 PSA graded cards.
That's not bad. I mean, you wanted 400, 136 is still a nice haul.
No one should feel bad. I spent over 6 figures. It's just that I feel like, no matter where you are in life, right? If there's extra cupcakes, even though you had one at the party, you're like, "Oh, there's extra cupcakes. I'll have another cupcake." And then one of the adults comes along when you're a kid and they're like, "Well, I'll have that cupcake." Meanwhile, you already had one. So yes, Jeremy, I'm very happy with
That's
the deal.
great.
But I'm trying to be as honest as I can and share with your audience an authentic experience that happened to me, because it's not always like, well, I just go hit the road and I just do whatever I'd like and I get to buy everything and it just always happens and it's easy. No, it's not easy. It takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
Even as
Right.
Leighton, even as a dealer, people come up to the table and they think that, I just have this special magical place I go to, and I pick up all these cards at 70% of comps, and then I bring them over to the table and I lay them out, and now I want 150% comps for them,
Life
Eh,
is really just that easy, Ken, right?
yeah,
We've all heard the expression, I'm sure, growing up, like the money tree. Well, let's coin the phrase tonight. Guys, there's no card tree. It takes a lot of work to go out there, even as
yeah,
a collector, right? Like I've got to know Drake kind of offline, and I met him on your show, Jeremy. Drake doesn't do this for a living. He's not a professional treasure hunter, but he cares. He's very passionate about what he wants, and that takes work to network, to follow up, and all that good stuff. So,
yeah,
Ken,
yeah,
that's very, very true what you just
yeah.
said.
And to get the deal done, right? Because you can do all that stuff and never get the deal done. You could put all that work in and then walk away empty-handed and then start over again the next day.
I'll leave you with this so we can change subjects, but I know this is a good sports metaphor. I'm not going to get into the detail here, but you can check it out on my blog for the full story and the video in the future at blog.justcollect.com. I was on like the half-yard line, I felt like, of the whole deal not even working out. So we went from that to like buying 136 high quality for the grade, PSA graded vintage cards from the 50s and 60s. So it's just amazing, like what happens in life, right?
It's nice to hear that collector was thinking that way 20 years ago and really trying to buy cards that were nice for the grade. We say that now, buy cards that are nice for the grade. And I didn't start doing that till probably 10 years ago, I think it was, when I first met Jeff from Card Country at the National.
I bought a lot of cards.
He sets up with Brady Hill. Though at least they used to. It was those guys that taught me about Strong for the Grade when I first met them in maybe it was 2012, or I don't know when it was, early 2010s. Bobby Burrell says, "Damn, Leighton, now I want a cupcake." Thanks a lot, buddy. Thanks a lot. Very, very. And Collector's Dream said, "Saw the video. You got some incredible cards. That's great." And Michael Ham, what is going on with you, buddy? Good to see you. And I got to do this one too. Scott Hirschman here says, "Do Canadians hate the U.S. always winning the cup?" I think the answer is yes. I think Canadians would like for a Canadian team. It's good for the economy, right? It's good for the economy and the morale. That's why Canadians would like for a Canadian city to win the Stanley Cup. All right, Ken, did you have a question sort of specific for Leighton tonight?
Yeah, I did. So Leighton, on my podcast, one of the questions I like to ask people all the time, I know you do a lot with vintage and a lot of different types of cards, but if you could only collect one player, who would it be?
I mean, I feel like I would not want to narrow it down to one. I guess I'll give you two. One would be Babe Ruth, just because ever since I was a kid, certainly, learned about him, was infatuated with what he did at a time in the game that no one else was doing it. And now that I have a few shekels, I enjoy, collecting what I can afford, right? And obviously the Ruth market's matured a lot over the years. Back when I was a kid, I collected 3 players, non-vintage, and I had my binder. I had my binder for each player. And so I collected Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, and Donnie Baseball. And, if I could do it again today, I know my son has his headphones on. I hope that my son has a favorite player or a favorite gamer of some kind, and really that we get to collect his favorite player together, because I didn't really do that with my dad. And so if I'm able to do that with him, I think that could be more important than collecting any player that I could possibly imagine.
What about you, Ken? Let's turn the question on you.
Sure.
Oh, turn it back to me.
Yeah.
Honestly, it would be Mike Tyson for me.
That's cool. That's cool. I like that. All right. Well, I'll answer it too then, but I'm gonna kind of cheat. Because listen, I would go with my favorite guy, Timo Solani, but he doesn't have enough cards, I don't find, to collect. So I would probably end up going with Wayne Gretzky, taking the easy way out, because he's just got a great selection of cards. Yeah. So, and I will stick with hockey.
I think that's one of the things, though, like for me, like trying to find the Mike Tyson cards, the ones that I want. You're right, the early upper deck ones. I mean, to me, it's the chase, and Leighton, probably a lot what you do. I mean, you're out hunting cards, right? So for me, not on that level, but trying to find these early upper deck Mike Tyson cards, they're not easy to find, and I enjoy that. I enjoy the hunt of it.
Yeah, listen, you kind of gamify it. It makes it a lot more fun. I guess I'd like to ask my own question, like Ken, Jeremy, of both of you, and then maybe the audience. I think it'd be kind of fun. But along those lines, so, right, I'm looking for cards in a professional sense. I collect also. I have a PC. But we talk about this all the time in our office when we get leads that come in. And I'm sure you guys are going to feel the same, both, you gentlemen as well as people watching. But, not every card that's worth $1,000 gets you as excited about the next card that's $1,000. So if I could ask you two guys in your audience, if you could wake up tomorrow, it's realistic, right? You're not going to find 100 packs of T206s that have the cards in them. But in terms of what's realistic, and if you want to say Wagner, go right ahead. But if you have to talk about a realistic find that you could make either at an antique mall, or your cousin Betty tells you about it, or your coworker, if you think about what you would like to manifest as far as a card find, and to be able to buy it, maybe keep some of it and then resell the rest, what would it be for you guys?
Go ahead, Ken.
I'll let you go. I got to think about this for a minute.
So what came to mind for me, Leighton, was a find that contained Hall of Fame rookies from like the 50s and 60s. So I'm talking about the Jim Browns, rest in peace.
Sure.
The Bobby Hulls, the 61 Fleer basketball cards, the Pete Rowe. Listen, I'm being greedy here, but that's
no one gets to say what's right or wrong about this.
Right.
I'm taking some notes because I don't think I can afford all this for your Christmas gift, but we'll see.
But that's where I would want to be, would be that kind of stuff. And, throw in, God, there's so many wonderful cards from that era. Even the year that has the Lou Brock and the Gaylord Perry rookies, is that 61 or 62? Yeah, like that era, I would love. I'll leave it at that. How about you, Ken?
So for me, it's a little different. I'm more of a modern guy. And I do have to say, I've been a Chiefs fan my whole life. Right. And unfortunately, I started collecting after Patrick Mahomes was a rookie. Right. Mm-hmm. So I would have to think, if I could wake up one morning and be able to go and get the 2017, Mahomes before, while he was sitting on the bench and Alex Smith was playing, that time period where, it was, you were able to go out and buy or rip or, do whatever, get all those cards. I think I would have quite a Mahomes collection that I would keep. I don't really collect Mahomes because it's what I sell. Right. It's probably my best seller so even when I get these great cards, it's easier for me to put it in my case and move them than to collect them. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Makes good sense. All right. So Leighton, hang tight. We'll go through the comments, see if anyone else answered your question, and then we'll let you go. And thank you as always for joining. Mike Petty here said, I like to buy cards that are bad for the grade. Then I set records for cards that are better than the grade. I think you're not alone. I think that's what a lot of people do. That's part of evolving and learning as we go, Mike, I would say. Mark Santucci would like the Montreal Canadiens to win the Cup. They're a far way away from that. Not going to happen this year. Stuke said, I'd like to see the Jets win. I think he's talking about the Winnipeg Jets. Lapper said the Las Vegas Golden Knights had 18 Canadians dressed for their Game 7 win. Not a Canadian team, but we know where we stand. Very true. Very true. Colin Murray would collect Willie Mays. Stukes would collect Roger Maris. Mark Santucci would collect Nolan Ryan. So I like some of these answers for sure. Scott said, after the Penguins lose, I always pull for the teams from Canada. That's very nice. Sports Card Professor said, I did not know that Wayne Gretzky is a collector when I mentioned on a prior show that he was the part owner of the Honus Wagner T206, the PSA 8 copy, which I don't know that he's a collector, Mr. Professor, but I know that he was a 50%, I believe, investor in that card with Bruce McNall back in the 90s. And Bobby Burrell says, an unopened box from my birth year. Hint is the tall boy. So 1964, Bobby. I'll let it out of the bag right then and there. And Collector's Dream says another Mr. Mint find case of 52 tops, high numbers. Sure. That'd be amazing. Philly Joe would collect Babe Ruth. That's right in line with Leighton Sheldon. And Hockey Barn says 61-62 tops Boston Bruins team card featuring Willie O'Ree, his only playing era card appearance. Right on. Larry Morris would collect Robert Gordon Orr, also known as Mr. Bobby Orr, number 4. All right. Leighton, anything you'd like to mention before you head out?
I feel like this is going to sound snobbish, but in terms of what I would like to show up, other than like the biggest unopened find of all time, would be either someone who meticulously ate the Cracker Jacks in 1914 and put the card back in the box because there was no factory sets, or in 1915 when they actually did have a factory set where you could have sent away, I guess, a quarter and a few coupons. I would love to see, and actually obviously own, a 1915 Cracker Jack set from the factory. I think that would be it for me.
That would be amazing. And thank you for answering that yourself. My bad for not turning that around on you earlier. Scott Hirschman would take a Jackie Robinson rookie. I don't blame you. 48 Leaf being my choice. Well, all right, Leighton, thank you again for joining. Always good to see you. Thank you for your support and enjoying your content. So check him out, guys. Trading Card Therapy is the name of the podcast. Leighton_Sheldon on Instagram, or Just Collect, and Vintage Breaks. Thank you, buddy.
Thanks for having me, guys. It was nice meeting you, Ken.
Nice meeting you too. Take care.
Take it easy.
And again, everybody, I want to thank AA Sports Cards, Mike Chark and Dave Kaplan, for tonight's giveaway. Again, we're going to do that shortly, but just so you can see what it is, they have just volunteered and said, would you like to do a giveaway on the channel? I said, sure. And this is what they are going to ship. It's only, I have to mention, it's only open to Canadian and American residents. So just want to put that out there. Our apologies to anyone who does not live in Canada or the United States. You need to live in one of those two countries to claim this giveaway, which we will get to in a little bit tonight. All right, Ken, let's get back to it though. So you just mentioned that you would collect Mike Tyson, and I know that you have a wonderful Mike Tyson card that comes with a story. You're a guy who likes to collect cards, and you say every card has a story. I'm looking behind you. I don't see it there. I feel like I saw it there the other day.
You did. I took it out so I could showcase it here on the show.
Well, let's tell us a story about how you talk about the card, show it, whatever you want to do. Yeah. Let's hear that story.
So it was a card I was looking for a long time. It was the 2013 Upper Deck Employee. They only gave there was a set of cards, these purple PMGs. They only gave them out to the employees as a Christmas bonus. And this was the Mike Tyson one. I'll just hold that up. So it was a card that I had been looking for a long time, and I knew where one was, and it was just out of my price range. And I went, as you know, I went to the Toronto Expo back in April. And my first day there, I was walking around, and I had hockey cards to sell. I mean, that was kind of my goal going up there, to sell some hockey cards. And my first day, I saw this card in a case, and I thought it was undervalued for price, and I was excited. I was excited for this card. I just, you talk about every card needs a story. I could have just went and picked the money up, and because it was a cash only dealer, just picked the money up and just bought the card. That would have been easy. But I set a goal for that weekend to start selling these cards that I have, to get up enough money, to Canadian money, right, to buy the Mike Tyson. And the first day I was there was Friday, and I did very well selling. And before I left, I went and checked. I peeked in the case, make sure the card was there. Saturday morning, I came back, same thing. Now, in the middle of this, I'm meeting up with listeners. I'm doing all this other stuff. I'm going and meeting up with you and everything else. And it finally worked out. We were so close. I mean, I was so close to have all cash but I just couldn't sell the last few cards. And I went back to him. I said, look, this is where I'm at, and this is what I have left. If you could find the difference in these cards, we can do that. And
now I have to ask a question. I got to interrupt here. You made sure the card was there Friday before you left. Saturday, you go back on the show floor. You go see the card is still there. What would you have, you moved some cards on Friday. If you had gone back Saturday morning and the card wasn't there, what would that have done to you psychologically for your whole trip up to Toronto?
it would have given me a whole other story to tell, the one that got away. But Jeremy, I'm one of those guys that, I'm always half full on the glass. And if I went back and that card wasn't there, I would have said, you know what, it just wasn't meant to be. It'll happen. I know it'll happen. I guarantee, I bet everything on that it's going to happen, but maybe that just wasn't the card for me.
And
And it was,
I always say, Ken, there's always more cards to buy, and there's likely another copy of that will come your way again. But please pick up where you left off. You were saying that you went back and you asked him to see if he could find the rest of the value in the cards.
yeah, find the rest of the value. And it was a busy day because it was Saturday. It was late in the day on Saturday. It was a busy day for him, and I waited a while. And he came back and he said, we can do this. He found a card we can do. And I got that card. I hugged that card. I took a picture of that card. Of course, put it right out to social media. All my friends back at home who knew that I was really looking for this card. I went to you. I showed you, my other listeners that were there. I showed them. I was like a little kid. With a brand new toy. I had to show everybody. And one of the best things that happened with this card was the following week. There was when I got home from Toronto, the following weekend, there was a show in Massachusetts that was about, a 2 hour and 45-minute drive that I'd never been to because, to go there for one day, that's a whole lot of driving. But I discovered Mike Tyson was going to be there at that show. So I said, I've got to go. I got in the car. I went up there, and he doesn't sign cards. Obviously, I wouldn't break this out of a PSA slab to have him autograph it. But I went and had a picture taken with him, and I had him hold the card. So here's a card. He didn't sign the card, but he still held the card, right? And if you want to see that picture, just go to my Instagram. It's up there. Very proud of that picture and the card and being with him. And it was just a great moment.
That's really cool. And I know who you got the card from in Toronto, Carlos Diego from the Sluggers 55 Instagram account. And he's always someone who I think will try to work with you. He wants to, especially when you show a strong interest. He's a good guy, a great dealer who sets up at the Expo and the National and the Burbank show and the Mint Collective, and just an overall good guy. So glad to see that you were able to work with him on that.
It's one of, when you set up as a dealer as a show, I see these kids come all the time and they look in the case and they ask me, and like, will you trade for this? And no, I won't trade for that. But then they'll keep coming back and say, I've gotten this card, or I sold that card. I have this much money. So they'll come and come and go. And I felt like I was that guy. I felt like I was that guy at the Toronto show with it. Although I wasn't interacting with him. I just kept coming back saying, okay, it's still there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. So talking about setting up at shows, when you set up at a show, do you go in with a strategy? Can you give some insight to the audience as to what maybe a typical vendor might be? And before I say this, like, I have to understand that a lot of people watching set up at shows too. So, we all have our own strategy, if you will, but do you have a strategy that is like the big Ken strategy for card shows?
I think, when you did this, I think that presentation is very important. When I show up with my cases, I make sure my cards are, I try to put my more expensive ones in the middle of the case and then work my way out to the least expensive. I make sure that the cases are cleaned. I bring cleaning, solutions that, so I make sure everything looks good. It looks sharp. And I think presentation has a lot to do with it. The boxes are ready. People can go through the boxes. And when I'm setting up, I look to my left and my right, and I don't want to put stuff where it's not going to get seen, or, it's going to get buried between the product, the tables on my left and my right will be. So I think when I first started setting up at a shows, I went up, I dropped my case, I put my stuff in, and it took me a long time walking around, realizing what other people were doing. And, they always say you're the sum of everybody else, right? So no matter what you're doing. So I just kind of went around and I just figured out what people were doing, what successful people were doing at shows. But I think at the end of the day, the absolute most important thing is me. It's the people, it's me, it's how you interact with people. I think that's so important. And being able to, know how to talk to people, how to treat people is really important in this, because a lot of people can be dealers, but they may not be personable people, right? They may put their stuff in and sit in the chair and never say anything. And some people will buy from them, but some people get turned off by that. And I think it's so important, just to interact with every single person that comes to my table.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think you've come up with two really a recipe, if you will, for card show success. Without you need the inventory, or you need the selection of cards, because as nice as you may be, or as well presented as they are, people they might not buy cards just because they like you. But you honed in on two factors there: personality and presentation. And I think you are right. There's a monthly card show here in Calgary that I go to, and there's one vendor who's got the dirtiest showcases. They're you can barely see through them to see the cards. And I always kind of say to him, his name's Rick. I say, Rick, why don't you get new glass hobs? Like, I can't be bothered. I'm too lazy. I'm like, oh, dude, like you'd be a bit more. I think you'd have a better show if you actually put some effort into the presentation. Just like if you've ever worked at a restaurant, the presentation of the food on the plate that's what a restaurant hangs their hat on a lot of the time. Yeah. How does it taste? But the presentation, I think maybe you and I are a minority, but I don't think so. But I feel like presentation is so important, because I will walk right by a booth if the cards are wrapped in elastics and in stacks in the showcase. I just don't even. It's just not for me. I'm not attracted to that type of presentation. So presentation and personality, I think, are two great criteria for a recipe of success as a dealer. So I'm glad you shared that. Anything else you'd like to mention about setting up?
No, I think getting there early, right?
Yeah.
Getting there early, get set up. That's a little bit of a hobby hack, right? You get set up, you're the first one in the show now, right? You could run around and look at everybody else's cases, and more importantly, interact with the other dealers too, because I think sometimes that's where the best deals get done as far as finding product, whether they're going to be your PC stuff or you're going to drop them in your case. I think that's because like on a day like today, we got up there, we set up, but once that show started, it was busy all day. It was busy all the way till 5 o'clock. So 5 o'clock came and they were saying, okay, it's time to break down. I hadn't even had time to go around and look at at other people's stuff. So I really had no purchases, to speak of for the day, just because the show was so busy.
You're right. The hobby hack, get there early, because regular attendees who might think they're the first one in the door, the vendors have already combed the floor for the most part during setup. Yeah. And so that is a hobby hack for sure. No doubt about that. Guys, if you're not yet following Ken on Instagram at sportscard_lessons, and of course his podcast and YouTube channel of the same name. Also, don't forget to check out the Center Stage app. I'm going to throw that up on the ticker right now. Support the sponsors that help support Sports Cards Live, and of course Veriswap as well. But we'll come back to them in a moment. We'll settle in here on the Center Stage ticker for a few more minutes. Rage is in the house. Rage says, "What's up? It was good meeting you last week at the show, Ken. Very cool. I heard someone mention Rage on a podcast just the other day." Mark Santucci used to do shows with his friend. Very nice, Mark. And Jeff McMahon says, "Mike Tyson just did a signing today here in Michigan. Huge turnout." Very good. And D wants to know, where is the Wolfpack event at the National, Ken?
It's right across the street at the
Crown Plaza.
Crown Plaza. Yeah.
I got you.
Right across the street from National. Thank you.
And to anyone who wants to come to that's a Friday night trade night that the Wolfpack with Rob Gerard, Ken, and others are organizing. And it's a cash bar. I've heard Rob say it a few times.
Cash bar. There's going to be giveaways. Yeah, a DJ. Yep.
Very nice, very nice. So check that out. And if you're going to be at the national and maybe you don't know anybody, or you're there alone, you just tap the shoulder of anybody you recognize that does content and ask them. I think most of us content creators can be pretty friendly. So definitely, don't be shy and come out to these events. The professor says, I shared with Sluggers about the 2 stories you shared, and he just messaged me that he will watch the stream later. Thanks, Professor. I know Carlos quite well myself. Stuke says, great points, Ken. Dealer-to-dealer interaction are important to a good show. For sure they are. Scott Hirschman says, I love the way Ken explains his shows, and he does that in his podcast. So we're gonna come to your podcast right away, Ken. Panthers win. Okay, I'm glad to hear that myself. Very good. That's 2-0 Panthers. The 4 remaining NHL playoff teams hurts the hobby. Does it hurt the hobby, or would other teams be better? That's a different thing. I don't know if they hurt the hobby, but they don't help the hobby. I think there's a slight distinction there, Paul, in my mind, but maybe I'm just being glass half full. All right, Ken, let's talk about your podcast. It's called Sports Card Lessons. Why and how did you come to start it?
So I'm a retired teacher. I taught in a prison for 30 years. My second job, right? My second part 2 of my life turns into this hobby. And it was just a way that, friends with Rob Gerard, right? Sports card therapist. So he's doing a podcast and we're talking all the time. And, I felt like I wanted to try doing it. We talked about it, but I felt like it would be like copying what he was doing, right? But what I realize now is there's so many podcasts out there that we all just have a different lane, and we all do our own thing. So mine was really just, here's a guy starting out, an older guy, right? Starting out in the hobby and starting out as setting up as a dealer and just learning a lot of things. Wouldn't it be great if I could just every week just talk to people about, what's happening with me, what I'm doing. And some of the things I did, I would go back, at the beginning, if I felt that I needed to change, I would change, and I would just talk people through it. But I think kind of what happened is you start to figure out what you do well, right? And I think what I do well is I break down shows. And I think people like that the most of what I do. I love going to shows. I love setting up. I love walking shows. And I just come with a great perspective of the show. And I enjoy sitting down and breaking down a show and talking about the people I met and the things I did and what worked at the show and what didn't work at the show and things like that. And people love that. So, that's here. I'm episode 91. Right, 2 years, season 2. I'm just over a year into it, and I'm having fun, and that's probably the key thing to it. I enjoy what I'm doing. You hear people say all the time, there's no retirement here, there's no, pensions or things like that. We do it because we love it, and I'm just having a lot of fun doing it.
Yes, if you're having fun doing it, you're gonna do it with passion and enthusiasm, and I think that the audience will stick with you that way. I didn't realize, and maybe I'm going to try and connect the dots here if there is a puzzle to put together, but you mentioned that you were a teacher, you're a retired teacher, but you taught in a prison. You're friends with Rob Gerard, sports card therapist. He's a licensed psychotherapist.
Yeah.
Rob has also said that he worked in a prison with prisoners. Did you guys meet working in the prison?
Yeah, we met in prison.
Did you actually though?
We actually met in prison. Yeah. And you know how we actually met is Rob started we knew who each other were, but he started a fantasy football league. And he came by and he said to me one day, he said, "Are you interested in fantasy?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And I got involved in that. We became friends. We were friends at work.
And then the card thing you had in common too.
Well, he actually brought me back in on the card thing too. So it just a short story here is it was a few weeks before the last Chicago National, and we were friends at work, and we were part of we talked. We were part of this fantasy football league, but he texted me one Saturday night and says, "Do do you collect sports cards? And I said, well, of course I do. I have a whole bunch in my closet here, right? I said, yes, I do. And he called me and we talked, and he said, would you want to go to Chicago with me next week to the net? I had no idea what he was talking about. So I said, no, I'm a little busy next week, Rob, to be, getting a plane ticket. But yeah, that's where it started. That's where we started. We communicated. We talked why, he was out there in Chicago. And that's really what got me back. And he got me back into the hobby.
Terry Fortune here says, lots of teachers seem to collect. Can you make sense of that at all or help to verify? Is there anything to it, or is it just coincidence?
No, it may be just, and you're right, because I have a lot of people who are in the hobby who listen to the podcast. I would say probably 30 or so teachers who have hit me up saying I'm a teacher too. So there is a lot of teachers, but I'm just not sure what the connection is.
So you're almost 100 episodes into your podcast. Can you, and again, this is a question just to give some insights into a podcaster for the audience. How has the mission of your podcast evolved over the 100 episodes? Maybe how have the goals for it changed? And what have you learned about the hobby, being a content creator, anything you really like? So kind of, 100 episodes in, just to summarize my 3-part question. What have you learned? How has it evolved? And and your mission, how is that? What is it now?
I'm going to start with how it's changed, right? So from when I first started, it's interesting when you think yourself, like, I think this is going to work. I'm just going to do X, Y, and Z. And then you start off like with podcasting, right? You get a few views, you have your friends and, your mother or your wife. So, people are listening, but not many. But then when you start to really get listeners and people following, and they start making, putting comments up, and you start, listening to them. And then other people in who are in the, who are collecting in the hobby, and they say, I don't think that was really good, or I don't think that was working out. So that I just started listening to people, and I kind of started making changes. So, I think the mission statement stayed the same. It was just about having fun. So for me, it was about just putting content out there from my point of view, and whoever it would help, I'm happy it would help. Right. So, as a teacher, it's kind of the same thing. As a teacher, I prepare so well, getting ready, lesson plans, everything. And then you do a lesson plan, and then you say, well, this is what worked, this didn't work. And you make changes. And the next time you're teaching that lesson, you're fine tuning it, and you're fine tuning it. And then what happens 90 episodes in or 20 years into being a teacher, you don't even have to go to that lesson plan, and you just know what's going to work. You toss that book on the desk and just go, because you know this stuff inside and out. And I think a lot of when I started the podcast, right, I was doing a lot of reading. I had notes, I had boards, whiteboards with stuff. And now it's a lot of, you see me, I'm like looking around, I'm just talking away. It's just me, just talking through stuff. So yeah.
All right, well, no, good stuff. Love to hear it. As I had up there, Mookie Chilson says that Ken executes a great lesson plan each episode. We've got Yelia Williams in the house. Good evening to you, Yelia. And the Panthers have won the game. Matthew Tkachuk already on the hype train. He had the overtime goal last game, and he has it again today. Boy, I sold my Matthew Tkachuk cards too early when he got traded away from the Calgary Flames. So I hope someone's enjoying those. That's one, sometimes we sell cards too early. All the time we sell cards too early. But I'm actually happy for the person that got a good deal and bought those cards for me when they did, because either they're going to sell them, make a profit, or they're just going to know that they got great cards at a better price than they could today. What happens to you, Ken, if you're a vendor, you set up a card show, you sell a card, and then 2 weeks later, that player does something that has an instant impact for the better, or for the increase to the value of their cards. How does that make you feel?
Well, it just makes me think that the person who bought that card knew what they were doing. They
Yeah.
were just a little smarter than I was. But I want to say, Jeremy, a lot of times as a dealer, it happens the opposite way. You're buying that card and you're saying, wow, this is a great card. I'm going to price it here. And you go to a show and people are making offers and you're like, no, 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 that value of that card's going up. And then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, the guy, something happened. He got injured, or he talked back in a news conference against his team. And then you're sitting there with all these cards, and now the guy's benched and he's not coming back. And these $1,000 cards are now worth, $100. And, it's, I'm usually on that end. And I'm like, come on, man,
Yeah.
but, always learning.
And it's always, you know what, the thing is that had I kept those cards through till today, I don't know that it's not like I'd go list them for sale. I'd probably like them even more now because he's doing so well. And you want to enjoy having a part of the player while they are playing at the peak of their career, which for Matthew Tkachuk might just be round 3 of the 2023 Stanley Cup final playoffs.
Yep.
So, it's not like I would sell them now. And then if they get knocked out somehow this round, they come down in value. So you're right back where you left off.
Yeah.
Timing, it's one thing I've never really tried to do, Ken, is time the hobby, because I just feel like I just can't do it. It moves too fast. What about you?
Yes. So my timing, what I've learned in the hobby with timing is stuff that I want to be selling in July in Chicago. I was buying the last 2 months, and maybe over the next few weeks or so I'll get some more in, but after that it'll be too late. And I think for me with modern stuff, because that's what I'm putting in my case is modern stuff, it's really, if you're able to buy it and hold it, who to buy, and you can hold it long enough, it's like money in the bank. It's going to work out for you. And I think that was the thing I had to learn the most is, being a dealer, is I was buying things and selling them too quick, or I was holding them too long. It was just finding that right time, like you're saying, timing the market and I'm getting better at it. I'm seeing the patterns, and I talk to a lot of people. People who know me will say they hear from me all the time because I'm always asking questions, especially people that I know who've been in this hobby 20, 30, 40 years. And they always talk about these cycle, right? And you know what they tell me? They say, vintage, that's the way to go. The guy's not getting hurt. He's not breaking a leg. He's not tearing an ACL. Just go get vintage and you'll sleep like a baby at night.
Yeah, definitely. There's something to that. I think I certainly tend to go that way myself. I want players who are established at least, or, active, but almost guaranteed Hall of Famers is definitely something that I like. Back to timing the market very quickly. I do, I don't act on this, but I always find that the best time to be a seller is like right before the playoffs or right before the season starts, when every player, right before the season starts, every player has potential. So from a just averaging out perspective, yeah, you might sell a card too early. The player comes out and has a great opening to the season, and you might have sold a bit early, but also those players can get hurt. Other things can happen. The team can go cold. And so I find that while I don't act on this, the best time to sell is like leading into the playoffs, when all those playoff teams and their fans have so much hope for them. And of course, going into the season, that's been my experience over decades of watching the market. Yet again, something I just haven't tried to capitalize on maybe as much as I could.
So in Canada with the card sales, like I know going to the Expo, right? It's not 85, 90% hockey there. Through the hockey season, now we all know right before a season starts, that's where usually the values are up. Is hockey hot in Canada? Like modern hockey, is it hot all year round, or does it get really cool like during the season and after the playoffs and things like that? Because I would have to imagine your card shows are mostly hockey, right? When I went to Winnipeg and in August, and I went to all these stores, that's all they had was hockey. So just a question to you, like with the sport of hockey and the cards, obviously they're selling all year round, but is the pricing good on it? Does it hold, or does it really roller coaster throughout the year?
I mean, I think the easy answer is you're going to get some better deals in the summertime, but summertime's probably not the best time to be selling for those reasons. The local card show that I was telling you about that happens here in Calgary once a month, they shut down for July and August. They don't even do it in those months because they're not in town. They're out at the cabin or whatever. They're enjoying the weather. So, hockey is a winter sport for the most part, and Canada has winters. So, but you said up in Canada, I would actually just say watching the online marketplaces. When is a better time to buy? And I would say the best time to buy hockey is probably like after the Stanley Cup playoffs are over, or even right now there's only 4 teams left. So you've got 28 other teams to choose from. And then of course the summer, but as soon as like the end of September hits and the exhibition games are winding down, the season's going to start October 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, in there somewhere every year. That's when it starts to get exciting again. Because as I was saying before, every collector's team, every player that all of us collectors collect has all the potential in the world if they're an active player, right? To have a great season or to win the Stanley Cup or whatever it is. So my buying recommendation, if you can find the cards, is, June, July, August, September. I think that's when you're going to get the best.
Same thing I'm doing now with football for national.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Skeppy has a question for you. What have been your biggest challenges as a teacher? How did you overcome them? And I keep it as hobby relevant as you can when you answer this, Ken, if you can.
Challenge. I mean, it's tough because you're asking me about what's my biggest challenges, and I worked in a maximum security prison. So there were lots of challenges there. But in the hobby, I really want to say, it's been really positive for me, and I tell people too, like I just mentioned maximum security prison, 30 years, and I kept it positive. And that's probably one of the most negative places in the world, right? And I went in every day. I kept it positive. And, I always say, whatever you're doing, it is what you make it. So if you want to make it positive, keep it positive. And no matter what I do in life, with this hobby, especially in this hobby, podcasting and everything, you'll never see me be negative. I'm not negative. I won't go on and say bad things about I just won't do it. It's not my lane. It's not what I'll get involved in. And a lot of times, people will, they may attack at me a little bit, and I just brush it off. A lot of it, I won't even respond to it because it's sometimes I just think it's silliness. Right. So, biggest challenge, just keeping everything positive. I mean, and it's where I want to be. It's the space I want to be in, a positive environment.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Okay. Well, let's do our giveaway for tonight. We have a giveaway. So I'm going to put on the ticker again for everybody. This is a thank you to AA Sports Cards, which is a partnership between Mike Chark and Dave Kaplan. As you can see on the ticker, they do buy, sell cards on consignment, aasportscards.com on the internet, and at AA Sports Cards on Instagram. The YouTube channel is called Mike Chark, and the eBay is Vahuda. So it's about a half a dozen things to remember there, but maybe pick one and you will be able to find these guys. The giveaway is for these 2 products right here. 30. It's like, I don't know what these are called. Hanger boxes, maybe. There's 35 cards in each one. Topps Heritage 2018 and Topps Heritage 2019. We're going to give away both to one winner. And then I'm just, they also sent me this information right here. 2018 Topps Heritage high number hanger box. There it is. 35 cards. Those are the rookies, I believe, that are available in it. And I'll switch to the 2019 as well. Those are the players that are available in that. So here's what we're going to do, everybody. Get your keypads ready. You're going to have to put in a hashtag into the chat in order to win this. You're going to put a chat. Here's Dave Kaplan himself. This is one of the gentlemen who contributed. He says Shohei Ohtani rookie and Vlad Guerrero rookie card potential. That's pretty exciting. I know these guys even. I say that because, people think I'm a hockey guy, Ken, but I follow all the sports. Well, not modern all the time. But anyway, we're going to do the giveaway. So here's what's going to happen, you guys. Let me just take that picture off the screen now that you all know what it is you are going to try to win tonight. We're going to have one winner. You have to be in the US or Canada to win this. And once we do identify the winner, you can send me an email, and then I will share it with these guys and they will ship it to you directly. So in order to win, you're going to have to put a comment in the chat, and that comment is I'm going to share the screen right now. There is the comment, hashtag AA Sports Cards. You have to put the hashtag in front of it in the comments. So I think you do. Anyway, go for it. Type in hashtag AA Sports Cards as you see it on the screen, and you will be entered to win those 2 hanger boxes. We have 4 entries so far, as you can see. I see we have over 60 people with us right now watching. Okay, here come the entries now. Here they come. Bobby Burrell is in. Kelly Winters, Mike Petty, Stukes is in. Narmac, Hockey Barn, Gary Hotch, or maybe Jerry Hotch, Paul Lack, Rage is in. Lapper's in. Donald Painter, Skeppy, Mookie Chilson, Mark Sakaguchi, Ryan Cola. See, now we find out who's with us, Ken. Now we see who's with us. It's good to see everybody. Sean Red, D. Perez, Willie T, Terry Fortune, Colin Murray, Webo2 is with us, Seb Menard, Parky Dan, Greg C, Studio Sports. Mike Petty says, what's a hanger box? It's a packaging SKU, Mike. It's a packaging SKU. LGC is here. The Professor, Jeff McMahon, Colin Murray, Larry Morris, Yelia Williams, Canadian Cards. Anybody else, guys? We've only got less than half of you have entered so far. Less than half of you. Ken, what do you think? How many should we wait? How many entries should we have? 32. Should we wait for any more or just draw for this thing?
I think 2 more.
All right.
We already got 2 more.
Two more. Those came pretty quick. We're going to go 10 more seconds. We're going to give you guys to get your entries in. Hashtag AA Sports Cards to win the 2 products, the 2 hanger boxes. Thank you to AA Sports Cards, Mike and Dave. And with that, draw. Here we go. Let's see who our winner is today. And we got Larry Morris with the win. Congratulations, Larry Morris. Larry, if you can reach out to me or send me an email to sportscardsliveshow@gmail.com, and we will get you hooked up. Either contact me, Larry, on Instagram or send me an email. And if you don't have those, just put it in the chat and I will post it in there for you. Let me know how you'd like to reach out to me, Larry, and we will take care of that. But congratulations again, Larry Morris, and thank you to AA Sports Cards, guys. Check them out. They quite randomly just offered to do this tonight, and I thought, well, that's awesome. Very, very nice. And thank you for the guys congratulating Larry. What a nice community we have here. Hey, Ken?
I liked Larry's picture. It looked like he had the pit bull with him on his shoulder.
Let's see it again.
Yeah.
There he is.
Yeah.
There he is. Larry Morris.
I have a pit bull myself, and I almost looks like I could see the pit in there. Yeah.
So Larry, you are welcome. Just I'm going to assume, Larry, you know how to get a hold of me. So if you don't, and he says, thank you, AA Sports Cards. Very nice. Let me know how you want to connect, Larry, and we'll get you, we'll make sure those get shipped out to you. Thank you, Paul Lack. Nice show tonight. So Ken, we're good to wrap up. Unless there are any other hobby topics that you'd like to address? I know you and I discussed a few, but we don't need to get into anything too crazy here. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about or mention at all?
No. I mean, I'm just happy to be here. It's like I said, I'm always on the other end. It's nice to be on the screen tonight. I feel center stage, and and I see the comments, the people coming in, and it's just great being on this side. It really is. Just enjoyed it. I appreciate you having me on. Yeah.
Oh, well, you bet, man. And I appreciate you having me on your podcast a couple months ago. And like you, I always enjoy going on other shows because there's no pressure. When it's your show, you've got the pressure. When you're
Yep.
on other shows, you can just chill out, relax, and
Yep.
answer the questions. So I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're enjoying this and had a good time. So well, with that, we're gonna wrap up. We got through pretty much everything on anything about the Wolfpack you'd like to mention. That great crew you got there. And
yeah, I mean, we have the channel on Instagram, the _Wolfpack _content. Every Wednesday we get together. There's 7 of us, so at least 2 of us are getting together and dropping a special Wolfpack episode every week there, as well as, because everybody has their own podcast, but we just come together, just collaborating and, just try to bring something new out. And I think it's been great content. We have a lot of great feedback from it. And we're all super pumped for the trade night at the Nationals. So yeah, we're looking forward to seeing everybody there. I mean, I know we have a room to for a couple hundred people, and I think that's going to fill up quick. I think it's just going to be a great event out there. Yeah.
Well, there's enough of you guys that form the Wolfpack that have audiences that are spreading the word. So I won't be surprised if it's lined up out the door. I'm going to definitely do my best to come check it out and say hello. And I can't wait. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Studio wants no after hours tonight. Studio Sports. I am sorry. No after hours. Paul Lack. No after hours show tonight, guys. My apologies. Skeppy says, good show, went by fast. Thank you so much, Skeppy. Mike Petty says, Big Ken is a good egg. Nice show, kids. Thank you, Mike Petty. Appreciate
Thanks, Mike.
that. Tomorrow night, guys, 9:30 Eastern, going live with Josh Madigan. We're going to cover the hockey auctions on PWCC Marketplace. Tuesday, taking stock. Myself and Dennis Zender are going to be taking stock on the issues involved with looking at your sports cards as an investment. I like talking about that. We're going to talk about that on Tuesday night. Thursday, the 25th, is the PWCC Premier Auction. And then next Saturday, where Big Ken is sitting right now, we have Big Al G from Instagram, guy I've known for 20 years or so, will be joining us on the show for another collector-centric type of episode. Hockey Barn says Mike Chark is a YouTube legend. He's one of the partners of the giveaway tonight. Thank you, Hockey Barn. Stukes says, always great when I can catch your show. Thank you, Stukes. Always great to have you here to catch it. Rage, as always, good to see you, buddy. Thank you for being here. And with that, say goodbye to everybody, Ken.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for having me, Jeremy.
Thank you, Ken. Hang tight, and everyone else. Until we see you tomorrow or next Saturday or somewhere in between, because I got a lot of content coming up. Have a great rest of your Saturday night. Enjoy Sunday. And this episode is now over.